The Zionist entity joins the global plot on Syria and attacks the Center of Scientific Research in Jamraya. Large-scale international condemnation of the Israeli attack on Jamraya. Christians following the Eastern calendar in Syria celebrate Easter only through mass prayers in churches. Good afternoon, welcome to our news bulletin. I'm Dania Nizam. Foreign Ministry affirmed that the Israeli aggression stresses coordination between Israel and the terrorist groups and Jabhat al-Nusra Takfiris to provide direct military support for these groups. For his part, Iran strongly condemned the new Israeli attack on the Center of Scientific Research in Jamraya in the Damascus countryside. Iran asserted that this aggression aims at destabilizing the region and disturbing its security.
Research Center in Jamraya is a national symbol that achieved success in many fields. It was the target of a second Israeli rocket attack in less than 4 months. This aggression came as a clear attempt to alleviate the suffering of the terrorists after the painful blows which they received at the hands of the valiant Syrian army in several places. It also shows that the Zionist entity is directly involved in the plot against Syria. Israel's aggression came as a reaction to the victories of the Syrian Arab army in various places, from Al-Qusayr to the eastern Ghouta in Damascus countryside.
The Syrian Arab army units have strengthened the siege of the terrorists to the so-called Jabhat al-Nusra in Al-Qusayr, and thus they cut off the roads of supplies from Lebanon after controlling several villages along the Syro-Lebanese borders.
Our news camera continues its field tour in the southern part of Al-Qusayr countryside for the second day. Units of our armed forces have restored security and stability in the area of Tel Hanash and chased the terrorists away. This was an important link from Arsal and Al-Nabik. It has been completely controlled by the Syrian Arab army, thus cutting an important road of supplies and infiltrators from Lebanon. The southern entry to Al-Qusayr in Al-Mashtal has become a safe area now, thanks to units of the Syrian army. Our armed forces have also chased the terrorists away from Al-Mashtal bridge, which leads to Al-Qusayr. Our army chased the terrorists out of Al-Dosariya and completed the full siege of Al-Qusayr.
Our armed forces have completely controlled the villages Jusia and Al-Abudiyya along the Syrian-Lebanese borders.
We are now in the south of Al-Qusayr city, where Al-Jusiya area's projects are located. This is Al-Shayahat to the south of Al-Qusayr, where we can see the acts of sabotage committed by the terrorist groups. We are standing in Al-Jura on the Lebanese-Syrian border, the point used by the terrorists to infiltrate into Syria. We are in Al-Khirbe on the south of Al-Qusayr countryside on the Lebanese-Syrian border. Units of the Syrian Arab army have eliminated the terrorist armed groups and controlled Al-Jusiya from the Lebanese border to Tal Hanash, Al-Hasbiya, Al-Zarra'a, Ras Al-May and Al-Ubudiyya region. This is Jusiyat Al-Kharab, and here is a hideout for the terrorist groups. It's one of the citizens' home. The terrorists forced the citizens to leave their homes from this village and the neighboring villages. This is the courtyard of Marlias Monetary in Al-Jusiya. It has been taken by the terrorists as a hideout, and they committed these acts of sabotage. Here is the tomb of Marlias. The terrorists attacked and burned this place. This is Tal Amuda, where security and stability have been restored by the Syrian Arab army.
Things get better after the Syrian Arab Army's entry. We salute the Syrian Arab Army.
In the village of El Bayda in the Banyas countryside, the workshops of reform and preservation rehabilitated the infrastructure that was damaged by the terrorists. All the works of reform had been completed and the networks of electric and energy, water supplies and telephone lines have resumed their natural work with the participation of the village inhabitants. In Damascus, a Syrian Arab army unit collaborated with the citizens in storming a terrorist hideout for the criminals of the so-called Jabhat al-Nusra in a house in the quarter of Al-Amara in Old Damascus. They confiscated their equipment, including explosive devices, prepared for detonation after being put on vehicles as well as contact equipment. Along the highway of Shahab al-Qal'a in the Damascus countryside, a Syrian Arab army unit defused a number of explosive devices planted on the way, each weighing between 10 and 30 kilograms. In the Homs countryside, and after close observation, our security forces staged an ambush against a terrorist group that was trying to infiltrate the Syria mountains after escaping from the blows of the Syrian Arab army in Al-Qusayr countryside. This led to the death of 11 terrorists. The road between the Syria mountains and Jusia was used by the terrorists to infiltrate into Syrian territory. In Homs, the Syrian Arab Army unit attacked terrorist groups in Al-Warsha quarter and Al-Qusayr to the southwest of Al-Husayniya, killing and wounding many terrorists. In Aleppo, a Syrian Arab Army unit killed and wounded many terrorists near the glass factory and in the villages of Al-Jubayla, Al-Musalma, Al-Aqamiya and Taneba in the countryside, destroying several hideouts and equipment that was used by the criminals. The celebrations of Easter, according to the Eastern calendar in Syria, were restricted to masses of prayers in churches and places of worship because of Syria's current situation. Churches rang their bells, and the Church of Mar Georgios witnessed a mass led by Bishop Luke Al-Khoury, who asserted that this occasion represented the victory of right against wrong and life against death. He said that the Zionist enemy chose this occasion to wage a savage aggression on Jumriya. The Zionists wanted to deprive the Syrians of happiness on this religious occasion. However, this will never break Syria's steadfastness and Syria's resilience to rise from the dust of pain and suffering. In the Syriac Orthodox Patriarchy, the celebrations were confined to prayers to see security return to Syria and to save Syria from the crimes of the mercenary terrorists who only aim at disrupting the social texture in the country. In the evangelical church, Bishop Boutros Zahour prayed to God to save Syria and its people from the crimes of the terrorists. He said that the bells of the churches will continue to stand near the minarets of the mosques, declaring that Syria will be victorious against its enemies and their evil plots. The Maronite Patriarch Mar Bshara Boutros Rai renewed the calls to stop instigations to violence and to end the crisis in Syria. In a speech in the Lebanese club in the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo, he called upon the countries instigating violence to stop such instigation and to help all parties to reach political solutions. He wondered whether the world conscience had died to such a degree as to send armed mercenaries to create chaos and destruction in our homeland. The Patriarch warned the people of the region to be wakeful against the dangers of foreign intervention in our region. And for more details, you can join our website, syriaonline.sy. It's over to our economic news with Vani. God bless Syria and God bless you all.